There is a lot of unused material that was filmed for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and Peter Jackson has revealed that over 1,300 hours of raw footage exist, including many scenes that was never shown in either the theatrical or extended cuts of the movie. With that being said, let's do a deep dive into all of the unused and deleted scenes that we know of from The Return of the King. First of all, Peter Jackson did say in the commentary that they had an alternate beginning to the movie, where it actually pans across the landscape and ends up zooming in on Aragorn, who wakes up from a nightmare. I'm not sure if this is intended to be the same scene that we see like 15 minutes into the movie, around the same time as Merry grabs the Palantír, or something completely different, because obviously in the final version a lot of things happen before that scene. And in the director commentary, Peter Jackson actually said that they shot a scene of Legolas and Treebeard having a conversation of the passing of the elves. A scene that I think would have been interesting to see, as Legolas and Treebeard are two characters that I never really thought about having an interaction, but it would honestly have been quite interesting to see what they had to say to each other.
Was only the innkeeper's daughter, but she managed a pint of my ale.
The scene where Merry and Pippin are celebrating the victory at Isengard and are smoking, eating and things like that, they apparently had varying degrees of how stoned and drunk they were. Dom said in the behind the scenes material, and Peter Jackson too, that they tried leaning more towards being really stoned, really drunk, but in the end they went for the more conservative version of them, just being a little bit high on kind of the ruse of winning, and maybe from the pipe too.
Long bottom leaf.
But not the more extreme versions that they filmed as well.
Welcome!
They did also film a shot of Bernard Hill reacting to the hobbits when they arrived, but that ended up being cut too. There's also unused parts of the Saruman scene that they mention in the commentary, but we don't have any footage of, such as him actually revealing the truth about the death of Theodred, something that they kind of leave up in the air in the final version. And Christopher Lee also said in an interview that Brad, who played Grima, specifically said, "You made me do it," when Theoden tries to convince him to leave Saruman's side. Moving back to Edoras, there's extra dialogue from Legolas.
So it's a drinking game. What exactly is the point of it?
As well as some few extra shots of Legolas and Gimli during the drinking game.
Give me another one!
And around the same time also some more shots of Merry and Pippin having fun as always. When it comes to the Palantír scene, they did actually film an alternative to this that kind of went a little bit more inside of Pippin's head, and I think Peter Jackson described it best here.
Going into Pippin's head while he's holding the Palantír and seeing him inside some sort of a cage, didn't we, in Sauron's? Some sort of metaphysical representation of what he's seeing.
And just as with the Two Towers, there are a few lines and scenes from the trailers that ended up never making it into the final cut, such as this version of Gandalf speaking about what happens if the ring is returned to Sauron.
If the ring is destroyed, Sauron will fall. But if Sauron regains the ring, his victory will be so complete that none can foresee the end of it while this world lasts.
Another shot from a trailer that was quite different from the final version is when Merry and Pippin split up and Pippin joins Gandalf for the trip to Minas Tirith. In the final version, they actually just kind of had a fight, and Merry is still really annoyed with Pippin, and when Pippin asks what's gonna happen, Merry is really sad and unsure and says that he don't know. But in the trailer, however, they depart with more confidence, saying, "We shall see the Shire again."
We shall see the Shire again.
So it's definitely a matter of changing the tone of the scene completely. Part of the movie when Arwen and Elrond speak in Rivendell, it's actually heavily trimmed down, and there's multiple angles both from the BTS material, trailers and documentaries that show stuff that didn't end up in the final version.
This was my choice. I cannot escape the fate of men. Whether by your will or not.
And Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens did actually say in the director commentary that they also completely cut out a scene where Arwen is in the library, and they joke about showing that in the 25th anniversary version, which I really do hope ends up happening.
It is time.
As well as more shots of the reforging of Anduril. The pacing of Gandalf and Pippin's arrival at Minas Tirith was actually filmed quite differently. The final version, they arrive and they overlook the city, and then they do the whole ordeal with lighting the beacons and such. But when they initially filmed this and they first arrive at Minas Tirith, the first thing they would see would actually be the retreat from Osgiliath and Gandalf intervening and helping them, which would then be kind of the introduction of Gandalf to the people of Minas Tirith. Not sure exactly why they switched the chronological order of that, but I'm not sure which version I would have liked more. When it comes to Frodo and Sam, there's not too much alternative and deleted scenes, but there's one example that they talk about in the behind the scenes material when Frodo sends Sam home. And at this point they tried to make Frodo almost appear like a junkie, since he's obviously heavily affected by the ring at this point. And they had way worse versions of him compared to the final version. Go home! That they then ended up toning down a bit to make it seem like he hadn't gone completely crazy yet.
Go home.
One quick line that Orlando Bloom actually said that they'd cut from the final version that he was disappointed that they did is when they are about to enter Dimhold, as the only one who speaks at this point is Aragorn, saying he's not afraid of death, and then goes in there. After which Legolas would say,
To wherever it may lead.
and then follow him. But instead he's just quiet and kind of walks in there, and then Gimli has his little conversation after that. There's also an extra shot of them finding a corpse with a torch, and Aragorn uses a piece of flint to get the torch going again. Kind of fluff that makes sense that they cut. When it comes to the battle of Minas Tirith, just like with most battle scenes in Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of cut shots from the movie, such as more shots of the Nazgul flying around, Gondor archers, siege towers, and even a shot of an orc jumping up on Theoden's horse, after which he smacks the orc down. And they do say in the commentary that they had way more shots of the Mumakil getting peppered with arrows, including one shot where an arrow actually hits the Mumakil straight in the eye, which according to them was very brutal. Also some fighting scenes taking place on top of a dead Mumakil. They do also mention that there was way more gore and stuff that was filmed. They had a lot of intestines and things like that, but most of that is archived away and can only be seen briefly in the background due to them simply wanting to keep the rating of the movie down. However, one of the arguably largest changes in the Battle of Minas Tirith is actually the design of the Witch King. He looked completely differently, as you can see here initially. They based his first design of John Howe's paintings that he has done for the book over the years, but realized that it just simply looked too similar to Sauron, and everyone who was screening the material thought, wait, does Sauron show up to this battle? So they ended up changing his look to really make it feel like this was one of the Dark Riders from the first movie, but just with his helmet popped on. And personally, I love this change. I think the unique look they gave to the Witch King makes total sense, and on top of that, they also redesigned his mace completely, and there's some really fun behind the scenes material showing how Peter Jackson just wanted him to make the mace bigger and bigger and bigger to make it really intimidating, which is also something they really succeeded in, making him get both a unique look, unique weapon, and fighting style. I think it's also interesting that there's a couple of shots that was deleted of Easterlings and orcs marching together that wasn't in the movie at all, and also shots of the Easterlings taking part when they storm through the gate of Minas Tirith, whereas the final version they only show orcs and trolls as far as I know. There's also some extra material of the Corsairs of Umbar, specifically some extra angles of Peter Jackson's cameo, which, in case you didn't know, he's the pirate who gets hit by Legolas' arrow and falls down. Another thing that was changed due to the rating of the movie was when Denethor tries to burn himself in Faramir, as that was initially longer and a bit more brutal, but got trimmed down due to that said rating. There's also a completely different version of Merry and Pippin reuniting, when Merry actually stumbles around, still conscious, instead of Pippin finding him half hidden under a corpse. In the extended version of the movie, we do get to see Aragorn in the House of Healing after the Battle of Minas Tirith, as he takes care of Eowyn and tries to heal her. But there's also a couple of unused shots that we have a few images of, him actually taking care of Faramir too, the same way he did with Eowyn. I'm not sure why they deleted that. I think it would have been a nice thing to see him take care of both of them, especially as we later see them meet and fall in love in that section of the movie. Back to Frodo and Sam, there's a few extra shots of Frodo inside Shelob's cave, as well as some more dialogue that he has with Gollum.
We've come back. Clean up later. Smeagol! Gollum! Help me! Then we'll go through the bones and the empty clothes. Then we'll take the precious for ourselves. The precious is mine! You'll never have it, never!
And later also when Sam finds Frodo and thinks he's dead after he was stung by Shelob.
What do I do now? What do I do?
Something quite interesting that Peter Jackson said in the commentary that they filmed is when Sam enters Cirith Ungol after finding out that Frodo is alive, they filmed a version where he has to break through the psychological barrier that these Watchers create. And the Watchers are these two statues that are placed at the entrance of the Citadel. And he yet again said that this is something they could include in a 25th anniversary edition, but I'm not really sure how this would actually look, like how do you fight a psychological barrier and make it look good in the movie. So I think in the end it might have been a bit confusing and made sense to cut. Something that I'm a bit sad that they cut is a scene where they put Aragorn's new armor on before they go to the Black Gate, and these two guys putting on his armor was actually two Weta guys that they wanted to acknowledge, as they were some of the ones making all the armor and putting in the hard work for these movies. So they wanted to give them a little bit of screen time. Unfortunately, this entire suiting up scene was cut from the final version and the extended version of the movie. Moving to the battle outside the Black Gate, there's quite a bit of extra battle shots as always, and Legolas having a line where he demands the Black Gate to open.
The free peoples of Middle-earth demand he come forth!
And some extended dialogue of the mouth of Sauron telling them their demands to release the halflings.
The halflings release. Gondor and all its lands shall pay tribute from Mordor.
Also another scene where Pippin holds Merry as they think they've just lost the battle, and apparently Merry was hit by an orc affecting his shoulder, the same arm that was earlier injured after stabbing the Witch King. So I think it makes kind of sense to cut this, as it just feels like a repetitive thing after what happened at Pelennor Fields. However, arguably the biggest deleted scene of Return of the King is Sauron actually appearing at the Black Gate. And there's kind of multiple versions of this, which is a bit confusing. Both him appearing in his angelic Annatar form, blinding everyone but Aragorn, but also a version of him physically appearing in his full armor, which makes even less sense considering he shouldn't be able to do that, so I'm not sure why they planned it. And when he's in this physical form, he actually fights Aragorn sword to sword. And some of these shots with Aragorn fighting Sauron was actually changed to the armored troll that we see in the final version instead, by simply digitally painting the troll over Sauron. The storyboard images do also show Aragorn actually stabbing Sauron, but that he barely gets affected by that, but once the ring is destroyed, his physical form explodes in front of everyone. In the end, I'm really happy they did it the way they did, because I don't know how they would explain Sauron appearing there in physical form. I mean, that was the whole point, that he couldn't do that without the ring. In terms of the reunion, they filmed a bit more grim version of this, where they weren't as happy and laughing, but more kind of silent. But I don't know, I like the joyful part they had of the reunion after everything that the Fellowship had been through. There's also a few extra shots of Aragorn's coronation, and the one that I kind of hate the most is when Elrond speaks with Gandalf, like, what the actual hell is that haircut? I'm really glad they cut this out, because that might be the worst haircut I've seen in Lord of the Rings, and in the final version he has more of a normal haircut, luckily. One section of the movie that was cut pretty heavily was the epilogue. Peter Jackson has revealed that they had a lot of plans for this, basically showing the fates of all the different characters, such as Gimli being in the glittering caves and examining some type of gem, and Legolas walking around in the forest. And on top of this, one pretty big chunk of this would have been the wedding between Faramir and Eowyn. This particular scene apparently had a quite large set, and we didn't really know much about this scene until a couple of years ago, when Miranda Otto actually revealed out on her Instagram a behind the scenes photo from this wedding. Why they decided to cut so much from the epilogue is hard to say. I do really like the way the movie ends, but I think it would have been even more satisfying to see the fates of all the different characters, and hopefully that material will at some point see the light of day. There's also a scene that the actors who play the hobbits mentioned that they really liked and wish they would have kept, which is when they get back to the Shire, they kind of stop on a hill with their horses and overlook the entirety of the Shire as kind of a nice close-out to the movie. And as for the very end, when Gandalf says goodbye, he does actually have a direct conversation with Pippin that was cut, and I would have liked to see that because Pippin and Gandalf built a very strong bond with everything that they went through at Minas Tirith. So I think in the end there's not too many major movie altering scenes that were deleted except for the ones with Sauron, but there were still a lot of them that Peter Jackson mentioned would be nice to have in the 25th anniversary edition. Are we ever gonna get that 25th anniversary edition? Hard to say, but I mean it would be really nice timing if we got something like that around the same time as the new Gollum movie hits, but as of right now I don't think there's been any official word on that edition actually happening. But if you've enjoyed all of our deleted and unused scenes videos, I would love to hear if you would be interested in seeing something similar for the 3 Hobbit movies, as we would love to dig into those next after this. Other than that, thank you very much for continuing to support our content. We very much appreciate it, and as always, may the orcs be with you.